Today we are finally going to be doing a second take of my Creatista Plus review video because the first one, as you guys knew from my previous videos, ended up getting kind of cut and did not end up filming half of the video by accident. So today we're going through another take of that. I'm going to take you guys through the pros and cons of this machine, and hopefully this will give you some guidance as to whether or not you should and or want to buy this machine for your home as an addition to your coffee bar. I will say that I get a lot of questions about this machine specifically. I think there's a lot of hype around the machine, especially because it's a little bit more expensive. It looks very classy, right? So I'm very excited to dissect the pros and cons with y'all. And I say first we get into the pros, so let's get into it. So the first pro I have for this machine is that, given what it is, right, a single serve pod machine from a big brand of coffee, Nespresso, I think that it's going to give you probably the closest that you'll get to a coffee shop style level beverage in the comfort of your home, of course excluding the manual espresso making world, right? And what I mean by that is that it has so many different settings on the machine. It can make you a latte, it can make you a macchiato, it can make you a flat white, etc. And the reason it's able to do that more so than, let's say, you get another espresso machine like the Virtuo Plus that I reviewed, is that it has this lovely little steam wand right here, right? And that is going to allow you to achieve a lot of different milk textures, more so than if you get like a Bodum electric milk frother, if you get one of those handheld battery, frothers and stuff like that and warm up your milk, right? This steams the milk, right? It incorporates water, it heats up the milk while also frothing it through steam all at once. So it's going to be able to kind of help you achieve the different style of beverages, because lattes have a different foam style than cappuccinos, and both of those have different foam styles and use a different milk type than, flat whites and all that fun stuff. So with that being said, having a steam wand is something that I don't think is on a lot of other single serve pod machines. So it's definitely a pro and a plus for this machine. And that's arguably one of the reasons that I ended up buying it. Two, I really like to practice my latte art on it, and it's, I'm not saying it's good, but I'm saying that in general, I think, if you want to practice those skills and you want to actually create the best coffee shop level beverage in the comfort of your home, this is probably going to be the closest that you get, unless you buy like, a few $100 machine that's maybe a little bit more expensive, where you have to, go through the trouble of weighing out your beans, you have to go through the trouble of dialing in your machine. If you want to mitigate all of those, I guess, advanced level complex espresso making steps just to start practicing your latte art, just to make those style beverages conveniently and in the comfort of your home, I think this is probably the closest that you're going to get to that with all the conveniences. Now, pro number two is one that I feel like it's very simple, but honestly makes a really huge difference, and that is the warm-up time on this machine. When I tell you it's in a matter of seconds, I mean that as soon as I press this button on the top, put in a pod, it's ready to disperse my espresso or brew my long shot, whatever I want to do that day. And we're talking a difference of seconds versus a minute or more on my Virtuo Plus machine. And to the average person, I guess that doesn't make a lot of difference. But when I'm comparing the two, and let's say I'm trying to put in a pod on my Virtuo machine to make a coffee for me, and this one for a coffee for TJ, it does feel like I'm standing and waiting at my Virtuo light to turn green in order for me to actually start brewing for what seems like forever in comparison to already brewing 2 or 3 shots on this one by the time that's ready. So if you're one that kind of rushes out the door every morning, which I can be very guilty of, I'm often late, I do think that this is the way to go, honestly, in terms of warm-up time, quickly getting your coffee together. It makes a difference in the morning, honestly. Another pro I have for this machine is that it is really easy to clean. I think one comment that I made in my Virtuo Plus review is that it can kind of be hard to clean the little areas where the needles go and poke at the pod, to get my hand in there and scrub everything. I find this machine extremely easy to clean. This little drip tray comes off, the water tank comes off, this little pod chute comes off, and so does the little drip tray and little stand for like a espresso cup or a little espresso pour. So everything you can just take out, and honestly, if you don't feel like hand washing, which I'm not a hand washer gal in the sink, I really like to put anything that I can in the dishwasher. I don't know if that's entirely recommended, but you can, and obviously my machine is still working just fine. So it does provide some conveniences in terms of you can just throw all the parts into the dishwasher, clean it really easily, and you can really get up in there once you take out this pod dispenser or chute here where it collects, and you can really get up in where the espresso shot gets in. Same thing up here, you can clean into here. I think it's very easy to clean and makes my job, every week when I'm cleaning my machine, very, very easy. Fourth pro I have for this machine is that it's really, really easy to use, especially considering that we're making espresso, right? And this makes it very easy and customizable to be able to make the coffee that you want to have in the morning for coffee lovers of all type. And I know it's like a weird pro, but what I mean by that is that considering that we're making espresso, if you were to make it on a manual machine, if you were to make it on a semi-automatic machine, there's a variety of different factors to consider when making that espresso shot to ultimately make that cup of coffee, right? You have to consider the grind size. You have to consider how fresh your beans are. You have to consider the pressure that the machine is creating to create that perfect shot. There's a variety of other things that you have to consider when manual or semi-automatic espresso making that are very much mitigated when using a machine like this, right? And that makes it really, really easy to use, especially for people that are beginners that don't really care to learn or are not at the level of wanting to learn about all the factors that contribute to the perfect shot of espresso. Now, if you are the type of person that really wants to get into that nitty-gritty, which I highly encourage at some point in time, if you have the time, if you're really getting into coffee making, I think that espresso making is truly an art form and it's a great hobby to have. I think it's worth investing in. However, if you are the type of person that gets up every morning, you want something fast, you just don't want to spend a whole lot of money at a big brand coffee shop or even a local coffee shop, because we know those can be expensive too. You don't want to spend $7, $8, $9, whatever dollars on a almond milk latte from those coffee shops. I think that this is a perfect kind of in between for you because you don't really have to worry about all the factors that go into it. It's very, very easy to use, and I can even do a demo in a second, but even on the machine settings, you can customize them. If you want a little bit more water volume or less water volume to your espresso shot, let's say you want a ristretto, let's say you want whatever, you can customize it. You can customize your milk temperature if you want it a little bit less warm, etc. You can do all that in this machine, which is something you can't always do when you're working with other single serve pod machines. The fifth pro I have for this machine is that, honestly, it's a pretty nice looking machine. We gotta admit, very aesthetically pleasing. I really enjoy the way it looks in my kitchen. I think it's very shiny, very expensive looking. Always helps, right? I don't think you should buy this machine simply because it looks nice, but if there are other factors that you really enjoy about the machine, like let's say you go over to your friend's house, they have it, they're hyping it up, you watch this video, you really like all the pros that I'm going through and don't think the cons are deal breakers, I think that this could be the machine for you because as a cherry on top, it's also very aesthetically pleasing. The last pro I have for this machine, which to be fair, can be applied to all original line machines. It's not just, specific to this one, but is the cherry on top when thinking about buying a Creatista Plus, is that the original line pods, which is the one that this machine takes and uses, they can be found in a variety of different places, grocery stores, Amazon, all that fun stuff. There's so many different third-party brands for original line pods now that it's kind of become like the K-pod version of Nespresso. Like you can find third-party pods of the original line pods anywhere at this point. And so it does make it a little bit more convenient in comparison to having a virtual machine where there's more limited third-party pods available. I do think that the virtual is getting up there now, and it does have the refillable option where you can get your own beans and grind them and refill pods. But for this one, if you strictly are looking at convenience, you can easily go to Target, Walmart, wherever, Harris Teeter, Publix, etc., and get, Pete's pods, Starbucks pods. There's even local roasteries that now have original line style pods. I think I went over Compass at one point in time. So there is a really big draw and appeal to having an original line machine in general, more specifically just one, just because it's cool. Y'all, it's come to the time in the video where we have to discuss some cons, okay? And my number one biggest con, And keep in mind, this is not a ranked list, but if it was, this would be my number one because it's a lot, okay? The biggest con that I have for this machine is that it's very, very expensive. It's over $600, probably $650 give or take, for a single serve pod machine like this. And do I think that you should go out and buy this machine for $650? No. Did I go out and buy that machine for $650? No, I did not. I did not. You guys know, if you watch my videos, I bought this used on Facebook Marketplace. I cleaned it up. That might not be the way that you want to go about it, and I respect that. But there are some ways that you can get it cheaper. You can wait for some deals to happen on Amazon Prime Day or some holidays where you can get it for $450 and not have to spend that much. I could justify the machine being around $450 just because it does have that nice little steam wand attachment. It does have the nice little LED screen with the settings, and you can customize it. But generally speaking, I think that if you are at the point in your journey where you can do the more manual espresso making, or you want generally more control over the factors of your coffee, like grind size, like the type of beans that you brew, and just, tampering with those little factors, I think it's probably worth it to use the money that you saved from this and go out and buy yourself maybe even a Rebel Bambino Plus, not something that's not like super over the top expensive, and just buy a really nice grinder. I think a grinder is half the battle when making espresso, if not over half the battle, because that is what's really going to make your espresso over the top. So definitely invest in a grinder, and then, think about what type of espresso machine you want to brew with. But those can always be upgraded, especially if you want to separate your espresso machine from your grinder. I know it's not very efficient for counter space, so take that as you will, but I think it's worth investing in a grinder more so than investing in the machine itself, if that makes sense. So yeah, if on the contrary, you're more into the idea of convenience, you're kind of like me at my stage, I guess, where, I'm going to school, I'm going to work, I might not have that much time on the regular to brew and worry about dialing in my machine. It might be worth just sticking, trying to get this as cheap as possible and getting, an original line like this, or even another machine where you can, still enjoy a really nice style cup of coffee, but, not that expensive and also very conveniently fast, and you don't have to worry about all the complicated factors that go into making that espresso. Another con I have for this machine, and granted probably a warranted con considering the size of the pod, you cannot refill the original line pods. At least I haven't found a good way to do that on Amazon, like using a kit yet. If you guys find one, please let me know. But generally speaking, you will be stuck to using the already made single serve pods from Nespresso or some third party line, which differs in the Virtual line machine because you can actually, refill the pods with like coffee that you ground yourself and that you really like from a local roaster, or even from the grocery store if you just want to save some money. But generally speaking, it could be a con or it could be a pro. It just depends on who you are. To me, I think it's a con just because I would like to go and start, trying and experimenting with different cups of coffee using the beans that are locally grown and stuff in my area from local coffee roasters. I think that would be fun. So if you're at that point in your coffee journey, I think that it's worth maybe going a different route rather than spending the big chunk of change on this. But again, it really just comes down to convenience and the type of cup of coffee you want. This next con probably goes without saying, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page, because I do get some questions about it. This machine only brews ristretto shots, espresso shots, and long shots or longos. You are not going to be able to brew bigger cups of coffee like 8 ounces or 12 or 18 ounce carafes, or even cold brew style coffee, because I know that I think some of the Vertuo Next machines, if I'm not wrong, or Vertuo Pop or something like that, brew bigger like carafes and even cold brew style coffees. Those are not going to come out of this machine. Lattes, cappuccinos, flat whites, those are generally what the name of the game for this machine is. So if you're coming off a Keurig and you still think you're going to miss those 8 ounce cup of coffees in the morning, I think you should probably go with the Vertuo machine. And that's for every original line machine. If you buy like a mini Essenza or an Essenza mini, whatever it's called, if you want to get a Pixie, anything like that, those are all going to brew roughly about the same. the coffee volume, like espresso shots, you know, longos, and I think this is the only one that does ristretto shots generally in this machine, but I could be wrong. This has the perk of doing the ristretto shots, which I don't think a lot of other original lines in Nespresso do, so bear that in mind, but generally you're going to deal with smaller coffee volumes than the virtual line machines. The last con I have for this machine is that it only has a single boiler system. What does that mean? That means that it cannot steam milk and pour espresso shots at the same time. If you go to your lovely little cafe down the street or your coffee shop down the street, you're going to see that they can pour shots and steam your milk at the same time. Unfortunately, that cannot be done with this machine. And it's not something that people really think about or really care to consider when they're buying these machines or kind of weighing the pros and cons. Let me put it this way. When I am brewing a hot cup of coffee, it does take a while, especially if you're doing multiple shots at the same time. It does take a lot to make my beverage in the morning. So I guess that's, you know, the warm-up time is very short, but that kind of eats at the time there if you are somebody who loves a hot coffee or a hot latte, cappuccino in the morning. I don't think it's going to be a big deal for most people, but if you're like me, and you know, sometimes again, you're rushing out the door, you're already late for work, it's a cold day, you want a hot latte, it can take a really long time because I'm crazy and one of those people that likes to have 3 shots of my lattes. And so it can take a lot of time to brew each of my espresso shots and then warm up my milk. I guess the pro of that is that it's very automated. The milk, if you put it how hot you want it, it'll automatically just go and you don't have to know when to stop steaming your milk. I know that can be something that, again, is one of the factors in making latte art or hot cups of coffee in the morning for people who want to go into that part of the coffee making journey. But generally speaking, it does all that for you. You don't have to time the amount of time that it takes to pour the shot or to steam your milk, so that's nice. But generally speaking, it does take a lot of time to end up doing both, and I do find myself being like, oh my gosh, this is taking too long. So take that as you will. You know, fortunately, I have 2 different machines, so I can always brew in my virtual machine and then steam my milk on this one, which I often do. But that's up to everybody and how they want to weigh that level of con and whether or not it's a deal breaker. Okay, y'all, that is it for this week's video. But if you do have any other pros and cons that I'm missing or want to chat about in depth a little bit more about why I like or don't like this machine in certain aspects, I'd love to address any of those concerns in the comments. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I envision this video is probably going to be released a little bit after Mother's Day, so from me to all the wonderful moms that watch the videos I do and subscribe to the channel, thank you for all you do. We could not live in this world functionally without you moms. So again, really appreciate your time and watching my videos. It means so much. In the meantime, any video recommendations are heartily welcomed, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Bye.